Hey friendos, today's episode I'm talking about game dev community and how to find a community, how to identify a solid community, and how that can really help mentor you into your game development dreams. So let's get this going. Hey friendos, DW here, and today's episode is about game development community, and more specifically finding your game development community, because I'm a game developer, I'm new at it, and if you're a game developer because you're trying to make a game, you might hit a couple of bumps along the way. It's gonna happen. You're gonna want some steering or a little bit of advice or something. And community is a great place to find that. My technology-based day job as a solutions enterprise architect is community has been integral to my career success. And today I'm going to give you 4 more modern places for, it's 2020. There's a lot of new ways to do community these days, especially in technology land. We're going to talk about that throughout the rest of the video. But before that, I want to kind of address one key thing that I find is a challenge that I always have to face, but I've also heard other people have this issue when they're trying to get involved, and that is about imposter syndrome. They get worried that because of their lack of experience or they're not getting paid, or they're not a professional, they're more of an amateur, that they don't belong in a community. They're not able to share and contribute and ask stuff because they might embarrass themselves or it might waste someone's time. But I want you to think about something. The community isn't just one kind of person. It's a group of different kinds of people with different, diverse sets of experience. That is the critical part of making a rich ecosystem of learning for your community environment. You need different kinds of people. So in game development, AAA kinds, small indie times, solo indies, students, artists, designers versus producers versus developers versus the list keeps going on. But you need all of these different kinds of experiences in a single space to actually make a rich ecosystem, to make a successful community. So don't worry about if you're really whether or not you fit in or whether or not you're experienced enough, because if you're trying to make a game, you qualify. I stole that from Mike Bethel on Twitter. I'm sure it was Mike Bethel. But don't let your lack of confidence, your lack of experience get the better of you. Like, really take this seriously, really think about what you're trying to do, and realize you are trying to be here and you're working on stuff, and that means you belong. Because a good community is welcoming and wants different types of experience. And I'm talking, we want new people experience as well. You definitely need people because they have a completely different perspective of getting into the industry or getting into a technology stack than you do, that you've been doing it for 5 or 10 or 15 years. When you talk to these people in this group, they want to hear different experiences because the industry is constantly changing. Everything is constantly evolving, and you need that in a technology-based community, is these different perspectives. And so people with richer or more experience can look and actually listen to the people with less experience and try to understand how they're approaching it, because they could learn something from that too, because the way they did it probably doesn't work anymore. And if you found a community that is not very welcoming and they're kind of like, well, we're kind of an advanced group, blah, 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 I would just say, just boom, no. That is not a welcoming group, and that's not going to be a solid community. They don't want outsiders' opinions. And I'm not just saying if they're just straight up saying, thanks for coming out, but we don't really want you here, that's a bad community in the first place, and it's actually a dead community as far as I can see. A community needs to be growing and getting new members and new experiences to keep themselves relevant. Otherwise, it becomes an echo chamber unto itself, and technology, game development and design included, are forever moving, and they move exponentially fast. So if you're gonna just shut your doors and keep people out of it, not a great group to be a part of. You're saving yourself the effort of getting out of this. So don't lose confidence. I know it can probably hurt your feelings, but you know what? Go find the next group. I guarantee you there's some welcoming groups out there. I certainly have found plenty of them. And I'm going to show you 4 ways or 4 places you can actually find them. So the first one is probably a pretty easy one for most. It's chat applications, more specifically Discord and Slack, but there's other ones like there are traditional chat boards like IRC, there's apps like Gitter, there's different things that are out there, but Discord and Slack are the two big ones that I've used. I use Discord primarily, and the development communities I found on there are exceptionally welcoming. There's a lot of them out there. The only commitment you have to do is you have to find them, and after you find them, you have to click a button to accept an invite for them to generate an invite and then send that to your email. So you have to usually you have to provide put some skin in the game to participate. So have a registered Discord account, and then they'll send you an email. That's it. That's the whole idea. And then there's people that you can live chat with, you can have a conversation with. But I will emphasize, please, when you enter a new community, respect the rules and understand the room you're entering. You wouldn't just walk into a restaurant and start shouting and yelling all of your problems right away about food. You go in, you figure out what the etiquette is, and you sit down, you figure it out. And this is the same thing with these environments, but they are super useful and they are exceptionally welcoming from my experience, all the way from the deepest C++, and I'm looking at you, #include or #include, and also things like GameDev, Ask GameDev, or Bracky's group, or all kinds of people there. There's some great communities out there, and I highly recommend taking a look and finding them for your favorite product or studio or solution or any of that kind of stuff. So number 2, user groups and meetups. This one's an obvious one for me. This is where a lot of things started. This is a traditional one going back to like the 70s and Bill Gates' famous letter yelling at all the user groups about paying for software. Meetup.com or Eventbrite, whatever your preference is, they will find you local technology groups in the areas you prefer. Any technology you can think of is probably there. That being said, we're talking game development. Winnipeg has a local game development scene. They have a series of user groups here. When I'm in different cities, I take a moment to actually look up on Meetup and Eventbrite, what are the events going on while I'm there, because sometimes there's opportunity to actually meet new people in person. When I go to Seattle, I try to go to the Seattle Indies meetup, any of that kind of stuff. I try to find my way to meet different people and meet these individuals. Now, it's very intimidating, and I realize this isn't for everybody. But do keep in mind that these are people meeting together, and there's opportunities to hear interesting stories, have a pint, have a beverage, whatever, have a Coke, coffee, whatever it is, and just hang out with real life game developers. And that's really cool. They're normal people. They're flesh and blood just like you and me. And they've got interesting stories from high highs to low lows, and I highly recommend going there. Special shout out to the indie support group and the Seattle Indies team. They're fantastic and they're really welcoming. It's had a really high bar for welcoming outsiders when it comes to me. I made my way over there, and man, it was so great. So I highly recommend doing this kind of thing. So, and if you look at the screenshot over there, that's actually my user group, and I'm actually presenting on community contribution for technologists in 2020, which is kind of the foundation for this talk. So see, it's all about give and take. So number 3 is social coding. So I'm talking about GitLab and GitHub and things like Bitbucket, and I'm sure there's other ones that I'm not mentioning, but GitHub and GitLab are the 2 biggies. And there's a lot of cool stuff on there. Between video game projects that are fully open sourced all the way through to game development tools that again are fully open sourced. Now you might be intimidated. Maybe you're a designer and you can't contribute source code. That's okay. As you've probably realized as a game developer or a game designer, there's a lot of moving parts to a game. And projects that are open source are just like any other project. They need input from all kinds of people. Testers, designers, artists, just plain players or users, people that are willing to do triage. There's lots of opportunity to actually just look and see how something works and learn from other people to see what their work is. And you can actually run it on your local machine or whatever you got to do. Now the kicker to this one is as you start to participate in a project, maybe you're not going to be adding features in the first day, but you might be adding some bug fixes, or you might be adding some value with respect to testing and become one of those people of the community that really helps. And now you're learning how to build a video game in a real sense. Like, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But it might not be your own game, but it is getting you experience in real life, and it's building you a profile online. So there's nothing wrong with that from a professional side. So really think about social coding sites. Even if you're not a developer, I highly recommend taking a look at them. They all usually have documentation about how to contribute and what they're looking for. And a lot of great projects, especially the open source ones that I've seen, they can be very welcoming and you can get involved right away. Number 4, this is kind of the easiest one to throw at you, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway, and that's social media. I mean, social media is such a gimme these days. When I started, it was just blogs, and I do mention RSS or blog comments as a form of social media, or using things like Medium or Gama Sutra in the comment sections there to actually talk to developers and whatnot. But keep that in mind that if you find an individual's blog, they're taking their time to share information. If you want to ask questions about that blog post, absolutely throw them up there. If you have some opinions or thoughts, share them. Share them constructively, but share them as you see fit. And these individuals will be happy to have received your comments, and if there's a constructive one, they're probably more than willing to engage with you in a conversation about it via their chat. Twitter is another great space to read and consume content, but don't think of it as a platform for you just to start shouting at game developers to get information. I find it to be an interesting place to see what the game development community is like, following different hashtags of game design, game dev, game development, different games that I'm looking at, seeing the different development teams, looking at what those game developers do, and understanding that a game developer is a real person. That's what Twitter has taught me. When it comes to social video, I wrap that up into social media, but streaming platforms and YouTube are a great source, because not only are these people, broadcasting video, either live or pre-recorded, but the people in the comment section also want to be there, or the people in the chat rooms also want to be there. It's a really good chance for you to participate, ask some questions, and especially when it comes to live streaming, it's an interesting space because those people that are doing this live stream want to share. They want to contribute. They want feedback. It gets, depends on who they are, but for me, when I'm doing a live stream, it gets me thinking in a different way that I normally wouldn't do by myself. And so participate, ask questions, facilitate that community and conversation by figuring out what your role is and what kind of questions you have for them. And perhaps you have some good ones for them, like, what about this, what about that? Good questions. Don't ice break with that, though. Don't just walk in there and again start shouting your problems. No one likes that. You wouldn't do that in a washroom. You wouldn't do that in a restaurant. You wouldn't do that at your friend's house. Just walk in and yell. But you understand, these are people that want to be there and they're sharing. So go in there, take what they're sharing, and add a little bit more. Take a little bit more by asking, because by giving them questions, you give them opportunity to think. That is participation, and that is a positive thing you can do with social media. The last thing I want to point out is that this whole thing is a give and take relationship when it comes to game development or game design or technology communities at large. At the beginning, though, you are going to take. You're going to take a ton and take everything you can. I believe it was Rami Ismail that said, just take and take and take when you're getting started, because you need it. You have nothing, so take what people are offering you, whether it's contact information, answers to your questions, anything you can. Be constructive, be positive, and don't be rude, but take as much as you can and grow it. But realize that at some point, it's going to be a good thing to give it back. Community has been a pillar in my professional career since the beginning, since I left university, and I can't imagine doing game development and taking a new project on, a new chapter on in terms of where I want to go with my technology career without a layer of community involved. I just cannot understand how that's possible. So although I might not be able to give all that much right now, I definitely am taking a lot and giving back where I can, and that's what you can do too. And with that, that's the end of the video. So thanks for tuning in. What kind of sources do you use to find your game development or game design communities or technology communities at large? Is it just online, or do you relied on word of mouth, or is there something I completely missed that I should have mentioned in this video? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. So until I hear from you, have yourselves a pleasant day and or evening, and take care.